Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
As you've noted, with respect to Judge Marchand, I mean, I am like now, I have like a man crush on him. He is such a great judge that it's hard to see that the jurors wouldn't have the same impression. I mean, you just keep on thinking, if you looked in a dictionary for like judicial temperament, that's what you get. And
well, there you go. That was not an AI. That was Andrew Weissman, the discredited Russian hoax prosecutor who has a man crush on Juan Marchand. And we have a crush that you're here, dear audience, because you're going to help us figure that out.
Somebody needs to.
I'm so thankful for our audience. I mean, they're going to the text lines are going to blow up at 573-874-9390 with trying to help me figure out what Andrew Weissman sees that is so crush-worthy about this judge. Welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie is out today. She's on assignment. Hannah's holding down the fort. John is there going to make sure with deep analysis on Andrew Weissman. John, I hope you'll be commenting. What was that all about? A man crush on a judge from a CNN?
I was like you. I was like, this is an AI put on.
From an MSNBC. But this guy is a guy that was, remember, his prosecutions have been overturned by appeals courts and Supreme Court. I mean, he's a disaster area. Of course, that's where he belongs, is the archipelago that is MSNBC. So,
you and your big words in the opening segment of the show.
It's the archipelago. Well, if Stephanie can say spoliation, I can say archipelago.
That's good.
Today is the second. Well, we didn't really have a full day of jury deliberation yesterday, but, a pretty good chunk of things. So today's the second day of jury deliberation. The legal analysts are going deeper and deeper into the weeds to try to discern what Judge Merchan. How do you get M-E-R? How do you get Marchand out of M-E-R-C-H-A-N? Marchand. That's like Obama. Pakistan.
How do you get Scarlett Johansson out of Johansson?
Well, sometimes J's are pronounced like Y's in
Europe. Scandahuvia.
Scandahuvia.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, this guy's last name is probably not English.
Yeah, that's right. That was when he was practicing law in the Gulag in Siberia.
Yeah, that's right.
His name was pronounced.
The Bjorn and Ingrid going to eat the cheese in the Scandinavia and the Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, it makes sense to me.
I miss Stephanie.
Remember me? Anyway, that's story number one out of the box today. Story number two, a local Democrat, namely Stephen Weber, who's running for the Senate district that Caleb Rowden termed out of, has
Sounds
filed
so sinister when you say a local Democrat.
A local Democrat has filed motion to keep GOP challenger off the ballot. That's, I guess, the newly named challenger. And Bill Maher is either genuinely realizing the truth too late or realizing his base is shrinking. He said something the other day to Fareed Zakaria, or is it Zachariah? I don't know. That it's Zakaria, I think, that got my attention. And lots more in the state and local news. So we have a lot to talk about. Cheri Toalson Reisch is not done with her initiative petition on how the property tax freeze is to be rolled out in Boone County. She joins us at 7:10 to talk about that. She says they're not quite abiding by that newly passed legislation, or what would it be, John? Modified legislation on the senior property tax freeze.
2.0.
Yeah, 2.0. And she has her version 3.0 of an initiative petition that she's working on. We'll get an update on that from Cheri at 7:08, 7:10. And Susie Moore, who is a deputy managing editor for Red State and an attorney, she's been really following the Trump trial. She'll be joining us at 8:08. Actually, the show says 8:09 on the show sheet. So it'll be not 8:08, not 8:10, but 8:09.
Yeah, we'll see.
Set your clock for that.
That's right.
Kind of like
your alert.
Yeah, kind of like What's Hot with Hannah is supposed to be at 7:25 every day.
And other news. Now, I have a question to ask you, because I looked it up in the entomology books. Entomology is the study of insects. And
also an FFA contest.
Yeah. So there's etymology and there's entomology.
Very
entomology
big difference.
is and how do you remember that? What's the tool you use?
I always think that int sounds like ant.
Beautiful. There you go. That's it. That's the tool I use, too.
Oh, that's scary. We
That's
have something
good.
in common. Oh, no.
We have a lot in common. And so I looked it up, and cicadas are herbivores. That's why they attack the trees and they eat plants.
Oh.
Why is it when they land on me it stings?
Because they got pointy little stuff on their legs. That's what it. They get pointy little. I don't know.
Okay, so it's the little barbs on their legs, okay.
It's probably also the velocity at which they hit you.
I don't think it's that, though. I mean, they land and you don't know they're there, and then all of a sudden there's a sting. So it's about the landing gear. Yeah, they don't have a stinger. I knew that.
Well, I know that Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, he started a big bus tour across the state this week, and his team posted a video of him trying to hand wash the windshield of this big tour bus. And it's one of the, big old windshields. And all I could think about was how upset I would be if I took the time to clean this big old windshield by hand, knowing that it's going to get splattered with cicada guts 5 minutes down the road.
There you go. But you got to remember the lieutenant governor's background. His first job was washing cars at Dave Sinclair Ford in St. Louis.
Yeah,
I guess that's true.
He knows how to scrub a windshield, I'll bet.
Yeah, I know myself well enough to know that I would not be happy at the first cicada that exploded on the windshield.
Now, James says, I feel like Randy is the guy that would correct your pronunciation of Croissants. How do you say that? John?
I didn't catch what the word...
Croissants.
The breakfast food.
Yes, the breakfast roll from France.
Rice Krispies. That's how I'd pronounce it.
Hannah?
It's a croissant.
Yeah.
I've heard French people say croissant.
Well, that's great for French people, but we are not French.
I like croissant. Feels like croissant.
Randy, that's actually a great point.
What's a great point?
You sometimes,
Yes.
and I'm lumping you into a category. I'm stereotyping.
She's stereotyping. Look at this.
I am. There's sometimes a group of people who are too smart for their own good.
Yeah.
You falling into that
I'm
category.
not too smart for my own good.
And they like to pronounce words wrong on purpose.
Once in a while.
Just to
for
sound
fun.
a little...
Put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Yes.
Right, on the syllable.
Now, Randy, I know you're not doing it this way, but sometimes they just pronounce words differently than everyone else just to sound hoity-toity or smarter than everyone.
Sometimes I do it just to have fun because I think words are fun. The languages are fun. And
that would be etymology.
Etymology. Yeah,
too bad
that's right.
Too bad the FCC says we can't say the really fun ones.
I know.
It's kind of rude.
Yeah, you got that George Carlin clip ready?
Well, and there also, if you look at counties in Missouri, and you could in cities as well, but St. Francis County is a perfect example.
Francois.
Well, and what you and Hannah are talking about, there are people in Farmington that call it St. Francis County, but there are some of the old school folks that call it St. Francois County, including the former state senator from that area.
Really?
There's a city north of Moberly. You drive by it when you go to your farm. It is called Cairo.
Yes.
But people that don't know call it Cairo. But it's just, again...
what do you call this? What do you call the city in Egypt? It's Cairo.
Well, I understand. It's
how would you pronounce Laplata? If you were in Spain or in La Plata, right? But it's La Plata.
La Plata for sure.
Well, it's because we live in the middle of Missouri.
That's right. They've got the Amtrak and the cafe there.
For sale.
If we lived over by Kansas City, we would just think it was peculiar. So
that's true. There's also right near peculiar is Cleveland, not Cleveland, Ohio, but Cleveland, Austin, and there's just all sorts of unusual towns. But no, it is
New Madrid.
New Madrid's a perfect example, and
man, the lieutenant governor's getting a world tour on his state tour.
Yes, he is.
So but getting back to the Trump trial, this is really interesting. I've heard legal analysts, and we're going to talk with Susie more about that later. But this whole thing, the big controversy over the judge's orders yesterday were that finally, in the closing argument, the prosecution finally revealed that the underlying crime was, one of three crimes, right? Mm-hmm. It could be the federal election violation, filing something about tax, even if there was no tax deficit to the state, no decrease in revenue to the state, that even if you file something that would be a tax, and that has to do with how much Cohen was reimbursed over what he really paid. And then there was a third one. And the judge says, if 4 of you think that one was the underlying crime and 4 of you think the other and 4 of you, that's sort of unanimity, so that's okay. And many legal analysts are saying they've never heard of this.
I've never seen a case. John and I have covered the courts for 30-plus years. I've never seen it, and I don't know that, again, New York may be a little different, but it is that just caught me off guard as well. These national reporters, you think that a lot of them have come through the small markets and worked their way up. I don't know how many of them have, but I can tell you this. From watching some of the coverage, I can tell a lot of them have never covered court in their lives.
Interesting analysis.
You've got to. Brandon Rathert used to have he would say something, and it was not offensive. He said, talk to him like they're 2 years. Talk to me. He was talking to himself like we're 2 years old. Right. And it really is the way you have to explain it, particularly what you just said about the jury rules and stuff. And there's some of it is very, very, very complex.
Got to dumb it down for us.
Well, that's why it is, and especially because New York's rules apparently. But I've never heard a judge say anything like that. It's very unusual.
And the whole thing about I thought that the U.S. Constitution says that we are entitled to due process.
That's right.
Part of that is knowing the charge, and I'll insert the complete charge, the whole enchilada, about what they accuse you of doing. Mm-hmm. It appears to Randy, and again, you always hear me asking Stephanie, or you're covering the courts, John. I'm just a bloke out here trying to keep the cicadas off my windshield, But it seems as though the defense has a right to know what that underlying crime is so that they can focus, especially when they go first in the closing arguments, so they can know what it is. And then they go first the other day, and it's not until the prosecution says their case, this is jury what he really did. That seems like it's just a violation of our federal due process law.
You look at some of the big law firms, and those are the ones, that we see in the high-profile cases and all. They have complete teams who will work. They'll have one team that's dedicated strictly to the state court system and have another team that deals with federal court because the rules are so different.
They are, and that makes it even more complex. But, in the only gag order recently, John, and you, correct me if I'm wrong if you have any recollections, but, we've had some gag orders, obviously. And the former president doesn't seem to mind speaking his mind if there's a gag order or not. But the only gag order I can remember in recent memory, at least in mid-Missouri, would be, and it was at the time, and still is, more of a civil matter. It was Governor Greitens and his wife, I believe they're divorced now, Sheena.
They are.
And had to do, and again, a lot of that was behind closed doors, but it had to do with something about the children, and I don't believe any of them were... they couldn't comment publicly, as I recall from the judge at the time in Boone County. And I'm sure we've probably seen a few instances before, but I just can't off the top of my head think of anything. It's extremely
I remember
rare.
one during COVID that involved, and I can't remember the whole gist of it,
know. But beyond that, who knows how long it's going to take. At the end of the day yesterday, in what's a weird workflow for this jury, they don't have a copy of the judge's orders. That took Judge Juan Marsh over an hour and a half or so to read. And
that's what I've been circling back to all week long, because the judge and his jury instructions, and they sent out, a couple of notes?
Yeah.
They wanted to hear some more of the Cohen testimony, but they wanted to have a concrete, hard copy of the judge's jury instructions.
And he said no. So apparently, from what I understand, they are going to bring out elements of David Pecker. He's a National Enquirer publisher at the time. that always gets Hannah going here. I don't know why.
There's our 14-year-old girl coworker.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's locker room time.
The
Hannah.
12-year-old male coworkers that I'm with every day have rubbed off on me.
There you go.
And so they have asked for elements of the Pecker and the Cohen testimony, and they've asked to hear, I guess, a part or some of the judge's orders. It's reported that means the judge will read the orders again, bring them back into the courtroom. Now, there's fallout from this. The entire time that this jury is in deliberation, whether it is part of today, the whole day, all of tomorrow, all of next week, until November, it doesn't matter, Donald Trump is sequestered in a room next to the courtroom there, somewhere in a holding room, and he has to be available to come back to be present whenever they have a question and they send a note and they want something read to them.
And they went 4 hours yesterday.
This is unbelievable. The judge gives a 4-4-4 rule. I don't know. So that's number one on the D.C. rundown. Now, in other news, Judge Samuel Alito's wife got into a spat with the neighbors who were saying expletive deletas about her, apparently called her the C word, returning an abhorrent word referring to a lady, and other things that they did. She hung a upside-down U.S. flag. That then has led people to say Alito needs to recuse himself. The upside-down flag, John, correct me if I'm wrong, it has nothing to do with J6. It's one of the military branch's way of expressing disdain. days to do them in. John, you have that problem?
I'm having a hard time keeping straight what day of the week it is, too.
I really am, man. It just seems like when you pack 5 days of work into 4, it produces tension within me.
See, I'm glad because I have big plans this weekend. So
the stair climb.
Yeah, well, Stephanie and I finally convinced Stephanie to come hang out in Centralia.
Oh, you got that.
The second biggest city in Boone County. And she's not here to argue with me about it. So I
can... the greater Centralia Metroplex, as it's known.
Are we having an Ashland versus Centralia tiff?
Oh, that's been an ongoing thing, yeah. Ashland passed Centralia a couple years ago in population. But when she's here, I pretend to not know that fact. It really grinds our gears. Anyway, we're hanging out in Centralia for the Anchorfest parade. So look for the SUV labeled 93.9 the Eagle. You can't miss it.
How about that?
And then, Saturday we have the 9/11 Memorial Stair Climb at Furrow Field. We're going to be there with some station swag. I know some of our coworkers here in the building are completing the 110 flight stair climb, which is super cool. But we're going to be there hanging out with some first responders. So looking forward to that.
And they will be then basically assigned a name with a lanyard, right, or something, of one of the people who perished on 9/11.
Yep, and when they complete the climb, they get to say the person's name over the loudspeakers. So it's my first time going, and
it's pretty cool.
I'm pretty pumped.
It brings moisture to the eyes to think of that.
The Columbia Fire Department is going to have their bagpipe crew there for the opening ceremony, so I'm looking forward to it. Of course, I'm a fire wife, so it hits a little closer to home in the last few years than it did previously, but pretty excited.
Yeah, that's
and Hannah got me the good duty on the mic, so I don't have to climb the stairs.
Okay, so you're on the mic. Okay,
oh yeah,
good for you.
About that, John.
Beautiful.
Don't tell anybody, right?
All right. So I found this website because people are thinking about a lot of everyone's conversation, no matter where it's at, is about the Trump trial, unless you just are part of an unfortunately large swath of America that just doesn't pay attention to this. I don't know how you can not pay attention to this, but many people don't know a thing about this. But, and then the question is, regardless of how the verdict turns out, or if there isn't a verdict and it's 100, what is that going to mean for the election? But still, at the end of the day, I think when this is water under the bridge, unless he's in jail, I mean, that's going to be something. I'm not sure that this will have as big an impact on people's ballot choice as will their prices at the grocery store, at the carryout, or whatever. We got some carryout at Ocha Tide last night. Boy, what a great restaurant. We had fun with there. Got some carryout. Long day in the office yesterday. I said, honey, you shouldn't go home and have to cook. I don't want to put anything on the grill. So we did that. And it's just expensive wherever you go. And it's not because, John, these people are buying another house at the lake or, another high-end Tesla. They're paying more for labor. They're paying more for product.
Transportation costs.
Everything is going up. And so they have to pass that cost on to you. Why is that? Because there's so much money chasing so few goods or, whatever. It's money chasing goods. And when there's an imbalance and too much money for too few goods, prices go up. Okay. So I found this thing called Biden Mart, Biden-Mart.com. I think it's actually... Okay, it's paid for by, guess what? Make America Great Again. Okay, full disclosure. But let's assume that because it is, I guess that's not a good assumption that there's any accuracy to it whatsoever. But
way to ruin the narrative, Randy.
I found this site, but I'm because everything Donald Trump says is true and everything Joe Biden says is false. I think we can assume that a PAC in behalf of Trump is probably all true. Okay. With that assumption.
If there's any Democrats listening, they are just wanting to pull their hair
Can you help me get my tongue out of my cheek? Okay. So you can do there's a little shopping cart here and you can click what you want. So I clicked.
It's got a squeaky wheel.
Boneless chicken thighs, limes. That's for the gin and tonics before the barbecue. Potatoes, onions, ice cream, carrots, oranges, grapes.
A lot of produce.
Sweet corn. Got to have sweet corn.
Okay.
Cheese. Got to have a little cheese before the...
String cheese.
Yeah. Well, this would be take your knife and cut the cheese and put it on a cracker cheese. And eggs and coffee. Okay, just some staples here. And
got bread and milk in there?
I don't know if I've got butter. I don't see bread here. Okay. Your bill under Trump, $29.83. What do you think your bill under Biden is for that?
Oh, boy.
And again, like looking at it through the scope of this was paid for by a MAGA PAC?
Yeah, but still.
I feel like 29 is low, but I'll play along. I feel like under Biden, it's probably at least $40.
You're right, $44.78.
Wow.
A 50% increase. Now, and it changes depending on what you plug in here, right? So I think, boy, you can put in a ribeye steak, and it goes to 35 versus 54. I think beef prices have accelerated even more, haven't they, than the average?
Boy.
Well, yeah, beef prices have been struggling since the pandemic, really.
Why is this?
Well, during the pandemic, they had to close down some meat packing plants, meat processing plants.
Yeah.
And so there was fewer supply hitting the market. And, of course, supply and demand economics.
So when there's a bottleneck at the processing, then the producer at the farm just doesn't have the demand for his product. Therefore, what do? Offload cattle?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened is people from the family farm up to the big feedlots just completely, because of issues with all that, sold off their herds and had a little brief glut on the market. And then down the road, there was no product.
Okay. Well, maybe that's why it was so cheap under Trump, relatively speaking, because was there a little, like you said, a little gloat, not in the terms of greatest liar of all time, Michael Cohen, but there was just a glut versus a gloat. There was a glut, and then now it's really accelerated because the demand is outstripping supply as herds catch back up. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, and then the drought on top of it was affected for a lot of people couldn't afford to, feed their herd, and they had to sell them off like a lot of folks around here had to do.
Yeah, hay prices went haywire, right? I mean, it really went crazy. Yeah.
Having to, bring in hay from
Texas
other states, and that's expensive. And
I remember hearing stories about that. I mean, not just from one state away, but several states away. I mean, there was just crazy demand for hay that wasn't available.
Well,
I remember talking to Mike Keogh about that, saying he was getting it out of South Arkansas and places to the south and southeast and all that.
And it's not necessarily super uncommon to do that, but you're usually doing that much later in the year than farmers are having to do now because they don't have their own supply to rely on.
Well, and then, of course, like you mentioned, John, too, about not only is there the production cost, and energy goes into that cost, right? As energy prices went up, right? I mean, all of the equipment you drive with diesel fuel and stuff, I mean, that goes up. Then getting the cow to the processor, that's fuel and transportation, getting it from the distributor to the market. I mean, all of that.
Staffing shortages, just like everywhere else.
Man, but like let's say that this PAC got it wrong by 20%. That's still a 30% increase, right?
Well, I know for just my husband and I, and this is one of those things that, when we look at our timeline of when do we want to, start trying to start our family.
Yeah.
Groceries just for the two of us are so expensive. It's hard to wrap our brains around, how families with multiple kids are making it work.
It's tough. I mean,
you can't walk in the grocery store for less than $100 anymore, and you just come out with 2 or 3 bags.
What was it, a month or so ago that the CEO of Kellogg said, well, the way to get around the whole crunch on this is to have cereal for dinner every night. It's like, man, you priced cereal lately?
Yeah.
Wow.
Remember a couple weeks ago, I was mad because we treated ourselves to cereal and then left it at the grocery store?
Yeah.
Left behind a small fortune.
I couldn't believe it. I tried to, this was a week or two ago, I needed to pick up a box of cereal, and I was unbelievable. I mean, I remember cereal a couple bucks a box. It's $5, $6. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
The way to go is like the generic cereal brands that come in the giant resealable bags. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
They don't travel well. They tend to be about half the bag is powder when you get down to it. Bottom of the generic O's.
But I think this will, I mean, even Doug Shane, I forget, but he was a Hillary Clinton guy. Remember, he was big for the Clintons, Bill and Hillary. And he's been one of these guys warning, he's been the Paul Revere sort of the Democrat Party in the last few years. He's saying, You guys, it's the economy, stupid. Get it right. Don't keep telling people things are okay, Joe. Show a little empathy. That's the best you could do if you were Joe Biden, but he keeps telling people everything's okay, that life is wonderful, and people just aren't buying it. So I just found that interesting. Hey, I want to talk about this listening session that the Columbia Public Schools had, and it really applies to you anywhere. If you are involved in education, if you have a student, a son, a daughter, a niece or nephew, the whole issue of cell phones, the distraction they cause, not only in the classroom but out.
Phones aren't a distraction.
Not at all. Is
Not
a concern, I think, for many people with different interests and different stakeholder interest in education. And I think we ought to talk about that because there was a listening session at the Columbia Public School Board last evening, right? Well, I think it was last night. And was there like only 12 people showed up? But let's talk.
Does that really surprise you, though?
No, I know, but let's talk about the content of it. Let's talk about the content. documentation of the payment to the lawyer who arranged the hush money. I mean, it's crazy. We're keeping an eye on that, and we'll give you any updates as they come on online. In addition, I want to remind you, Hannah, I'm just really so excited about what's going on the 27th. I mean, it's going to be so much fun.
Yes.
That debate watch that we're having out at the Lakeside complex there, a very neat venue. I experienced that for the first time a couple weeks ago, and man, it was just, we had the best of nights there, and it's just a great place. And it'll be great to gather with like-minded folks and maybe not so like-minded folks. That's okay.
I know. We got confirmation last night that there will be a Democrat. Because, of course, we're offering, a little bit of booth space to folks running for office right now. So our listeners, an hour before the debate, kind of have time to meet and greet with candidates. Mm-hmm. If you're on the fence about anybody, about, who you're going to vote for in the August primary, it's a great chance to meet some folks. And the Democratic candidate for Attorney General, his name is Elad. He's going to be there.
Oh, Elad Gross.
Yes.
Yeah. Good,
so
good.
Excited for that. June 27th, we have all of the information linked on the radio station's websites and on our apps. Space is limited and it's filling up pretty quickly.
Wow.
So there's an RSVP form that I'd encourage you to fill out on the web, just so we can get an idea of head count. But it should be a pretty fun party.
It'll be a lot of fun, and you're not going to have a paper ticket. We just ask you to register, right?
Yeah, it's free to attend.
Yeah,
we just need an idea of head count.
And then you can partake of the various concessions there. I don't really like buttered popcorn, but if you do, you could go and have some buttered popcorn.
Well, and it's kind of cool because Lakeside Ashland is such a cool venue. Like, they're hosting Gavin DeGraw just a couple weeks after the debate, and so it's like, we get to be at the same venue that Gavin DeGraw.
Well, if you haven't experienced the big screen at Lakeside Ashland, it's pretty cool. We had one of our family members point out to me that their highlight of their thing is to see Joe Biden's nose hairs 10 feet tall on the big screen.
Oh, wow. All right.
Lovely.
The Columbia Board of Education. So, by the way, you can learn about it on our website.
Yeah. We have a Facebook event on the Wake Up Facebook page. Lots of places to find it.
Yep. Columbia Board of Education had a listening session, and it was about what to do. Well, it was about two things: the implementation of a weapons detection system and a possible student cell phone policy plan. Now, as I read there I was disappointed. There were only, a dozen people or so there.
Tara on the texter is estimating about 20 people there.
Oh, okay. And the reporting said, but there weren't a lot of people there. So that's the point, right? And so this policy, though, sounds as though the first time a student is caught using a phone, a warning will be issued. And they wouldn't allow phones in instructional spaces.
It's essentially a phone ban.
Well, but the enforcement is like who's the prosecutor there at the school? Are they a Soros-sponsored prosecutor? I mean, the first time a student is caught using his phone, a warning will be issued. A second time, it'll be taken away and held until the end of the day. After a third instance, the phone will be taken and a parent will be called to pick up the phone. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, that doesn't sound
And the fourth citation occurs, the student will be banned from using a phone. I'm sorry, there's no enforcement here. Where's the you get sent to alternative school to learn what the word that's spelled N-O means?
Well, my thing is, and maybe this is the media's fault, not our, as in, what we're doing here, but media, capital M at large, calling it a phone ban, because that doesn't sound very intense at all. I was all prepared to talk about how a phone ban isn't right because parents pay for the phones, and so it's not up to the school to take away the phones. But this isn't really a hard ban.
Thing I wondered about with this whole deal when we first heard about this, that they were talking seriously about banning phones and keeping them out of the classroom and all, and I was like, the average kid in school has a school issued, notebook, computer, iPad,
Chromebook,
whatever, Chromebook, and it's like they don't know all the ways around all the other different protocols to contact their buddies off their notebook computer or something. So it just kind of seemed kind of empty to me a little bit.
Well, and I know that obviously, students shouldn't be on their phone in the classroom. Like, I get that.
what we're talking about legally, look at it and say, wow, does the judge know what he's talking about? Something seems very wrong there. But we'll see what happens today, whether there's a verdict today or tomorrow. And continue to invite your thoughts on that at 573-874-9390. And boy, I mean, in the worst case, I guess Donald Trump could go to jail. I don't know. In the best case, he gets acquitted. I think the likelihood of that happening is the likelihood of Joe Biden getting through a speech without 10 or 12 gaffes. Well, I know someone who can get through speeches with no gaffes, doesn't require a teleprompter, and always does a fabulous job. And she joins us now. That's State Representative Cheri Toalson Reisch. How you doing, Cheri? Thank you for calling in.
Great, Randy. Thank you for having me on this morning.
Hey, you texted me yesterday when we were talking about this whole issue about the Boone County commissioners and in implementing a senior tax property tax freeze, according to the new legislation or the reformed legislation that you all passed this last session. But you don't think they did the right thing. Tell us about what the legislation was, what they've done, and where they're not aligned.
So Senate Bill 190 was passed last year, and it did have some ambiguity in it. So the legislature came back this year and made everything crystal clear that there would be no doubt in anybody's mind on how it would freeze people 62 and older's taxes. The problem is the Boone County Commission took no action, did a wait-and-see approach. At the last minute, threw on the April ballot, the voters want to pass certain, that was the key word, certain tax freezes. It passed 2-1. So the thing is, the new law doesn't go into effect until August 28th. But what this commission did, you hear about Friday news dumps. You never want people to know what's going on a 3-day holiday weekend. And I was researching their agenda Monday, or not Monday, it was the holiday. On Tuesday, I was wanting to look at this new tax abatement for the Oscar Mayer hot dog plant, because they give tax freezes and tax breaks and credits, to Equipment Share, all these other places, but they don't want to help senior citizens. So buried in the 5-page agenda was this senior property tax relief program. And I was like, what? I think that maybe they mentioned it on your show yesterday, but the devil is in the details. Tuesday afternoon, I called. I wanted a copy of what the actually does and doesn't do, and they're deceiving the people of Boone County because it is not following the new law. They are going by the existing current law, which means they can do whatever they want or they could do nothing at all. And specifically, there's a Section 4 on exceptions. And it says, and I'll read it, levies related to any and all voter-approved bond indebtedness from any taxing entity. So right there, they are deceiving the people, basically lying that if any bond issues have a tax increase, those won't apply. And so, I think they had bad information from taxing entities such as some school districts that had a consultant that Mike Murphy himself debunked those numbers. Mike Murphy has wrote about it, talked about it on your show before. And so I reached out to Mike, but I sent this language. So here's what happened. Tuesday night, they had the first reading. And you'll hear in the news they're going to talk about it today at 1:30. No, they're not going to talk about it. They're going to pass it. It will become law today in Boone County. And it's a halfway. It's not doing it the way the law was intended. It's not going to do what the new law, because, see, they're getting under the wire. They're doing this quickly and before anybody notices what it actually does and doesn't do before August 28th. And if they would pass this after August 28th, they couldn't do this. They would have to follow the new law and do it right. And so I'm going to have to continue with my petition. I've got 4,000-ish signatures. I have to get 4,600. And if I don't get that by June 11th to get on the November ballot, I will keep going. I've consulted with my attorneys in St. Louis, and they have told me this is deceptive, this is lying to the people, And for me to keep going, and at worst case scenario, now to be on the April 2025 ballot to do it right.
Representative, I remember during the early hearings at the very first part of this discussion over at the State House that some of the supporters of it said the law itself, they didn't think it went far enough. And I think one of them cited New York law where they actually have seniors can get as much as a 50% tax break on their income. You think there's a chance down the road that whole side of it could be revisited?
Well, baby steps. I think we need to do one thing at a time, and so many other states have given Homestead Act, tax credits, and elderly relief, and done this all across the nation, and numerous states you can look at. But Missouri loves taxes, and Democrats love taxes, and they don't want to give you a tax break unless you're some business coming in, which I can see that side of it, too. It creates jobs, puts money back into the economy. But this commission never did want to do this, and they really thought it would fail on the April ballot. And it was overwhelming, 2-1. And people are going to be upset. People are not going to be happy when they learn the truth.
Well, and it did pass overwhelmingly, Representative, and let's face it, kind of a blue county right now, and in many ways, Boone County. Two quick questions, and it was me on the news you're referring to that said that is scheduled to be discussed. I want to explain why I said that, discussed, because if you look at the commission minutes, it simply says, it's one sentence, quote, second reading, senior real estate tax relief program / first read 5/28/2024. So you're saying you don't think it's just going to be discussed. You think it'll be voted on today?
Absolutely. And it's not just you, Brian. It was on Channel 17 News this morning because they had the first reading Tuesday night at 7, and it's on the agenda for 1:30 this afternoon. This isn't a discussion. This is passing the ordinance. This is final action. This is taking the vote to do it.
I understand.
And they're doing it halfway.
And I understand that. I thought maybe if there's a big turnout, maybe they could potentially table it. But I see exactly what you're saying there.
There's not enough time for people to show up. You know, who's paying attention to a 5-page agenda with a one line, about this? I found it by pure accident because no offense to any news or journalism out there, but, if you just look at the agenda, it doesn't. I had to go literally get the policy. I'd be glad to email it to you.
Please.
And it's in there under exclusion number 4, number II. And you have to read the fine print. And they're hoping nobody saw it. And it's too late. I can't gather people who work who on short notice can show up because it's a done deal. They are doing it today.
So, Cheri, in the Columbia Missourian, I'm looking at the byline. April 19th, they reported that the Boone County Commission opted to put the issue on the ballot while they awaited new legislation. Kendrick said, I'm reading directly, Kendrick said waiting on establishing implementation would allow the county to take state law from the current legislative session into consideration. And he said, quote, Boone County is arguably in a better position than any other county to implement this program. We will be ready to adopt the policy within a matter of probably a week or two after the end of everything in this report suggests that their stated intent is to follow the law that you modified
but they're not.
Okay,
they're
what specifically are they not? What specifically are they not?
Okay, I'm going to read it so I don't get misquoted. Section 4, exceptions and exclusions, number AII, levies related to any and all voter-approved bond indebtedness from any taxing entity. That means any taxes levied for bond issues for people like any kind of political subdivision puts before the voters, and it would increase your taxes on your property to pay for the bonds, will be excluded. And that is not in the new law. They are not following the new law because the new law is not into effect till August 28th, and they are doing what they want to do under current law.
Okay, so you're saying that the new law was intended to exempt future base tax rate increases or even assessment increases, right? But since that's not in effect, they're going to keep that as an option for Boone County residents?
That's what they're doing. It's a fact. It's happening today at 1:30.
Well, that's a dirty bird move.
It is a dirty move, and they're trying to do it under the wire. They're not being truthful. They're hee-hawing around. They're skirting the truth. And you can look in here. They even put in here about the blind pension fund. They brought this up throughout the whole last year. The blind pension fund is irrelevant in the fact it is in the Constitution, is not affected. This had nothing to do with a blind pension fund. And if they want you to look over here so you don't see what they're doing over there.
And I want to add one thing, too, Representative, and I really appreciate you joining us live. Mike Murphy, by the way, will be at the meeting today, and I'm sure you'll see him over there at the Boone County. I'm going to the State of the City address. I think one of the, and Randy read the Missourian article. I've reported on it. Mike, you're right. He's covered this more than I have, but it is a hard story to try to explain in 30 seconds, and TV struggles with this as well, because you have to explain what's going on in the legislature, then try to tie in with what Kip Kendrick is saying, and Janet Thompson disagrees with what you're saying, and then you're basically saying they're lying and they're deceiving. And to try to, and then to explain, what this, it is a hard story to tell and get it. We're talking about AI or what, II or whatever you're talking. You had to go get it's hard to explain that.
But facts matter.
They do.
And the new law matters, and the current law matters, and what they're passing is not in compliance with the new law. I have talked to my attorneys at 7 o'clock Tuesday night after I learned about this, to get their legal opinion, and this is being put out there because they're doing within the law, that the current law. They can do whatever they want or nothing at all. Some counties have passed partial tax freezes. Some counties have done all across the board, and some have done nothing at all. That's the current law. But they kept indicating, well, if the legislature fixes it, we're going to do it. Well, we fixed it, but they're not doing it fully.
It sounds like they're adopting certain elements of the new law, but not the whole enchilada.
Correct.
Well, that's a stinky thing.
But Kip Kendrick would say something complete. I think Kip would disagree, Representative, with what you're saying.
Why would he disagree?
It's not my opinion. It's not his opinion. It's facts. It's what is in their ordinance they're going to pass this afternoon. Don't believe me. Don't believe Kip. Read it. Read what it says and get the facts on what they're actually doing today at 1:30.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to delve deeper into this. Mike Murphy will be there. I want to make sure that I can fully digest and understand this, and we're going to ask Mr. Kendrick to come on next week. Because it'll be too late by then, but we're going to ask him to come on.
That'll be great. Okay. And I think Mike Murphy...
And people can still sign my petition. I was hoping not to have to do it because they did not have to put it on the ballot. They cost people money. And I'm going to get those costs, and thank you for having me on.
All right. Hey, thanks, Cheri. And we remind everyone that Cheri is running as a candidate for the commission.
Representative, thank you.
That's right. Thanks very much. going on?
Well, now that we have everyone's microphone turned on, Randy, I often, for What's Hot with Hannah, like to highlight dumb criminals in the news. John also enjoys doing this in his segment at 7:50. But dumb criminals from Ann Arbor, Michigan are what we are talking about today in What's Hot with Hannah. It's a TikTok that's gone viral. It has over 10 million views.
Whoa.
And it is a video from a Zoom court hearing, basically. The judge is video chatting with the defendant, and you're laughing because you know exactly where this is headed.
I saw this.
Here's about 35 seconds of how this Zoom hearing is going for the defendant.
Are you driving?
Actually, I'm pulling into my doctor's office, actually. So just give me 1 second. I'm parking right now.
Okay. So maybe I don't understand something. This is a driving while license suspended?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And he was just driving. And he didn't have a license.
That's what the charge is, Your Honor, yes.
No, I'm looking at
Yes.
his record. He doesn't have a license.
So in this Zoom call, the defendant it's on his face. You can literally see that he is sitting in the driver's seat of a car, and in the windows behind him, you can see that the car is moving, and he is appearing in virtual court for some, traffic related charges and a revoked license. So, dumb criminals, keep doing your thing. And it's not a Florida man this time. It's a Michigan man.
And what's hilarious is at the end of the video, you showed it to me here off air, and at the end of the video, the guy's mouth drops. And what's he say? Like, OMG or something. I mean, he couldn't believe. What was he thinking?
He goes, oh my God.
He goes, oh my God.
Throughout
Wow.
the whole video, you see his open mouth dumbfoundedness just get a little wider.
It's amazing. Well, if you're thinking about judge's orders the other day, the more I'm wondering whether this jury may come back with a guilty verdict. I thought this was beyond reasonable expectation.
Trump sure didn't sound optimistic yesterday, did he, with his references to Mother Teresa and all?
He was very, he was more subdued. I think that would be a good way to think about his demeanor yesterday. And I don't know. We'll have to see where it works out, but we'll be keeping an eye on it. And if there's a verdict later today, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Obviously, we'll be getting some, I think, an overview of the entire now, 6 weeks of trial, going into the 6th week of trial from Susie Moore, who's an attorney and a deputy managing editor at Red State at 808-ish. So I bring up this story. About tattoos and a story out of Sweden.
Randy, before we start, is this going to be a poo-poo pants story about tattoos?
I am a truth teller. I attempt to be a truth teller.
Many of the Wake Up family members have tattoos, and they're fine. They're fine.
I guess you don't want to know about the new study from Lund University in Sweden, where they have a great database. That's the one thing about socialized medicine. You collect a lot of more easily aggregate data, okay? They suggest that tattoos could be a risk factor for lymphoma. I'm sorry. There it is. What do you want me to say? 21%.
You're right. I didn't want to know that.
21% increase, these epidemiologists find. Now, look, you're actually going to like this story, maybe.
Okay.
You're going to like my interpretation. This is an epidemiological study, meaning they look at people with a given disease, and then they look at individuals without the disease, but otherwise as matched as they can be. So they'd look at a group of people 24 years old who have 40 years old who develop lymphoma, and they ask them, did you have a tattoo or not? And then they take and they look at a bunch of other 40-year-old people that don't have lymphoma but are otherwise matched by age, and they look at sex and they look at
so they try to find
race.
Correlation.
Yeah, and they try to make sure it's a matched population, one of whom had tattoos and the other who didn't. And they found out that among those who had tattoos, there was a 21% increased risk. In the group with lymphoma, 21% were tattooed, 289 individuals. This is out of about 12,000 people. And 3,000 of whom had lymphoma when they were questioned between 20 and 60 years old. So now here's the thing, though. They only had 1,400 people answer a questionnaire. And remember, people are thinking, they're looking back. When did you get your tattoo? Blah, blah, blah. In the group with lymphoma, 21% were tattooed, 18% were tattooed in the control group without a lymphoma. Okay.
Does it say anything about the number of tattoos or anything like that, or is it just a tattoo period?
And this is where the rub comes in. First of all, when you look at these studies, and it's all over USA Today and CNN and everyone, when you look into it deeper, you find that there's some things that make you scratch your head. The size of the tattoo didn't seem to matter. So you would think that if it has something to do with the exposure to ink, the amount of ink, meaning the size of the tattoo, would correlate with a higher risk of, so those who had a whole body, like a sleeve and the whole back and everything tattooed, would have a much higher risk of lymphoma compared with one that had a little butterfly on their foot.
Yeah,
right?
like the amount of ink on your body.
They didn't seem to find that.
Interesting.
The whole thing, Randy, I bet you can probably speak to it, that I had a friend who got tattooed on leave in Tijuana one time and had some issues down the road. And, issues with bloodborne diseases, hepatitis and penicillin resistant strep and all that kind of stuff. So not to poo-poo anybody, but I think it's more where you get them and the cleanliness of the shop than a lot of things.
Well, what we do know is that it's well known that it's not unusual to get lymph nodes that drain the area from the tattoo to be swollen and inflamed, because some of that ink gets into the lymphatic system and it stimulates a response because it's a foreign body, right? It's a foreign body. Whether you get a splinter, or a tattoo, your body says, something, or a bee sting, Your body says that's a foreign body. I need to weed it out and limit it. That's what the filtering function of the lymphatic system is.
Well, and in a way, you kind of have to treat a fresh tattoo like you would a wound.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you wash it with antibacterial soap, unscented soap. You have to keep it moisturized. You have to keep it covered for a certain amount of time. And it itches while it heals really bad.
Yeah, I mean, the principal researcher said you really, especially if you have a high cancer risk or if you're, and if it bloodborne cancers, lymphomas especially, I think I would probably be concerned about that. I would probably ask your doctor, do you think I have an increased risk of having a problem downstream from this? And, you may want to consider, maybe thinking about some other way to express yourself. I don't know.
So theoretically, if you knew you already had a variant linked to certain types of cancer and you had a tattoo, you should maybe be concerned, is
but
what
remember,
you're telling me.
A lymphoma is a blood cancer, right? So it's a different kind of cancer than if you have there are things called MEN 1, 2, and 4. There's different, constellations of cancers you can get, and thyroid and adrenal and so forth. And here's the other thing to take with a grain of salt on this whole deal. There's a 20% increase. That means a lot more with a disease that has a very high prevalence, right? If there's a disease that's had a prevalence of 100 out of 10,000 people, that's a pretty significant prevalence. Well, a 20% increase is significant. If it's 1 in 100,000 baseline prevalence, and you increase that by 20%, now it's 1.2 per 100,000. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So in absolute numbers, I think this raises a bit of a red flag. I don't think I would wave it strongly for everyone, but I would think you'd want to talk to your doc before you contemplate a tattoo, see if there's any things that you should consider.
See, me being young and dumb, I never would have guessed that. They're so normalized, and you don't really hear many horror stories in terms of health when it comes to tattoos.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple on TikTok since I got mine, of course. Just like people having bad experiences with the healing process.
But remember,
and the whole angle, like we said before, where are you getting it at? Third world or something like that, as opposed to, a licensed, nice, clean, local tattoo shop.
Well, I think that speaks to the infection aspect of it. But the ink aspect, that's the other thing. There may be inks, and then there's inks. I don't know much about it. But it's like vaping. There's vape fluid, and there's vape fluid. Some of the vape fluid is clearly not as safe as stuff that is more highly regulated and so forth. Hey, when you go out and buy a supplement at your favorite supplement store, when they've done studies on these, and they look at what's in your St. John's wort, that's the famous study. It was done a couple decades ago, and maybe it doesn't apply across the board now, but they found that as much as 20% of what's in the supplement or what's on the label is not in the supplement, or it's been substituted.
Yikes.
So you have to just be careful about, that's where regulation, and yes, I say that word, the FDA, they do some reasonable things. and manufacturing standards to make sure that what you think you're getting is what you're getting is very, very important. So I would just say at this point, this is an epidemiologic study. I'd want to see a lot more work done in a prospective way to say, let's take you 24, 25, 24?
24.
24-year-old graduates of Midwestern rural schools, okay, females, and let's take them at time 0, and let's give 50% of them tattoos, and the other 50% don't get tattoos, right? And then you'd have to follow that prospectively. That's called a cohort study, where you really follow it going forward. I think that would be the kind of study I'd want to see. This look-back study, I don't know. Did they correct for other things going on in these people? Maybe people that get tattoos in the tattoo culture, I don't know. Is there a tattoo culture? Is there something else that they're doing in their lifestyle? Do they smoke more? Do they drink more? Do they do more marijuana? Do they wear body piercing more? Maybe that's the culprit. Maybe it's not the tattoo. All we can say is that tattoos in Sweden appear to be associated with a higher risk of lymphoma. But that's not the end of the story. John will have to report on the end of the story in a few years when we know that. in his Except for This, That Would Be All segment, which is coming up right after the break. John, you're not going to be talking about tattoos today, are you?
No, we have epic AI failures.
Oh.
Epic. Epic.
be a little more cautious. 6-year-old girl in San Diego, Brooke Neitzel, ordered a $170 KidCraft dollhouse and 4 pounds of Girl Scout cookies through Amazon simply by asking Alexa for them, but it didn't stop there. San Diego News Channel 8 did the story during the morning show, and during the broadcast, the news anchor Jim Patterson said, "I love the little girl saying, 'Alexa, order me a dollhouse.'" So down the line, Alexa devices in viewers' homes also got online and bought their kids dollhouses. Let's see, March, Microsoft's AI Twitter chatbot. They call it Tay. They were experimenting with what they call conversational understanding. Tay was supposed to chat with people and get smarter. So people, as they are, started treating crude, racist, and inappropriate remarks at Tay, and learning from the conversation, the bot began using the same language and turned into an offensive, vulgar, pro-Hitler Twitter account. In some cases, referring to feminism as a cult or a cancer, and saying, "I hate all feminists, they should all die and burn in hell."
Oh, my goodness.
And it turns out Alexa apparently likes to party. A guy named Oliver Halberstroh in Hamburg, Germany, was out one night, so Alexa decided to play really loud music at 2 in the morning. Neighbors came by, sent the cops over. They broke his door down, unplugged Alexa, and installed a new lock. Well, when Oscar got home, he couldn't find his keys. The keys wouldn't work. Went to the police station to get new keys, pay a locksmith bill, and a very expensive Disturbing the Peace ticket. Now you know the rest of that.
Wow.
Artificially intelligent story.
Holy cow. You know, I don't know about anyone else out there, but when I have to go out and do a chore outside and I leave my phone inside. I mean, don't most of us take our phone with us everywhere, right? Because we have to be connected, right? But when I forget, I feel after a while, there's that initial anxiety about, well, what if I get a call from a patient and everything? And so I eventually go in. But in that little 15 minutes of bliss, and it's not that, I don't want to be contacted by a patient. I don't like when once in a while, I don't intend for Siri to say, whatever Siri says. I haven't said anything like, "Hey, Siri." I just have said like, "Hey, let's get serious about it." Oh, Siri wants... I don't like my phone listening to me. I don't have an Alexa. I will not have an Alexa. I don't want any part of Alexa. Is anyone else I don't think it's paranoia. Is anyone else as concerned about them listening to us as I am? I don't feel comfortable.
Played with the Alexa initially, and then kind of the novelty of it wore off for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably my age showing again, but I don't think it's a big concern. I mean, are you discussing national secrets in your household? I don't know.
Or are you going to get, or are you just going to get the weather in Nepal for the day or something?
I just don't, where's privacy? There's a sanctity of privacy that is used to be an expectation of this American way.
But I feel like, too, I mean, these devices, they're listening all the time. So if you don't like it, you just shouldn't buy it. I mean, that's the workaround.
Or you'll like these guys, like the cops in Germany went in and kicked the door down and unplugged the darn thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Sam says, "Tell Randy just because he's paranoid doesn't mean others aren't watching."
There you go.
Thanks a lot, Sam.
Well, paranoia, though, is when when
they are watching you.
Well, that's right. It's when your suspicion is out of touch with reality. Well, I don't know what is. I mean, it just, they know everything about us. Look at the algorithms. My goodness.
There's a whole lot of folks on the payroll at the NSA, at the National Security Agency, and they just red flagged me over that comment.
And wasn't there a time, John, maybe I'm naive or too trustworthy or used to be too trustworthy, but when I was growing up, we had faith that the men and women in the FBI, the men and women at the CIA, the men and women at the FDA, at the Center for Disease Control, felt as though I felt as though those institutions I could trust on balance, that they had my interests at heart and they were trying to do the right thing. I don't any longer have that after the experience of the last few years. First with the Trump-Russia hoax, the Hillary Clinton debacle, on and on and on. And I just don't trust that we can trust enough of them.
Pandemic.
Yeah, the pandemic. My goodness.
Oh, we have some listeners on the text line pointing out, Randy, you have an iPhone, which means that Siri is listening all the time.
That's what I'm at. Even if you turn it off, I think, right? I don't know.
Well, there's a way you can turn it off in your settings. I'm willing to bet you probably haven't done that.
I don't trust that really turns it off.
Well, there's the paranoia.
John says,
like tracking your phone,
Yeah.
I mean, that track you all they want. Not much you can do about it, really.
Yeah. And I guess life is a matter of trade-offs of liberty for security, right? I mean, you work for the boss to get a paycheck, and there's certain things you agree to do and certain things you won't do. States. She's been following this like a hawk. Susie, welcome into the program.
Thanks, Randy. Appreciate it.
So, were you as stunned? I've been following what you've been doing and what you've been saying on this, and I get the sense that you have a certain alignment with a lot of the analysts that are saying there are some inconsistencies in the way most jury trials go and the way the judge has conducted this, especially the last few days with, the final arguments and then the orders yesterday. Help us unpack what's gone on this week as it's now in the jury's hands.
Yeah, I always knew things were a little different in New York, but I didn't realize how different until I started following this trial so closely. So the easiest one to point to is one that people have probably heard before. New York's trial courts are called their Supreme Courts. So that throws everybody off because when you say Supreme Court, you think highest court in the state. No, this is their trial court level. In New York, unlike in most jurisdictions, when you're talking about closing arguments, instead of the normal order, which is the prosecution gives their closing argument, then the defense responds, then the prosecution gets a rebuttal option because they do have the burden of proof. So in those instances, basically, the prosecution lays out their case, makes their argument, and then the defense gets to come on and basically defend themselves and make their argument for why there shouldn't be a conviction. And then the prosecution gets to close things out. But in New York, they just do a two-step process. Instead, they just have the defense go first and then the prosecution. So the defense is having to just basically kind of respond in anticipation of what they think the prosecution is going to lay out in their argument. It seems very strange to me. I've not seen it done that way, but that is how they do it in New York.
Okay.
And then,
well, let me interrupt you there. Okay, I think many reasonable-minded people could say, okay, if those are the rules and the defense knows those rules, the defense should at least have the right to have all of the, I'm going to use a non-legal term, the salient, the pertinent, the due process facts, knowing what the accusation is, so that at least you can anticipate with reasonable knowledge that all the summation that the prosecution is going to do, having the last word, is stuff that's already been aired. Mm-hmm. Did that happen?
Yes. I would say not so much in this case, because until the instructions were read to the jury yesterday morning, most of us, even those who've been following it closely, were still unclear as to how exactly the prosecution was setting this up so that these misdemeanor charges became felonies. It wasn't clear. And I will tell you, having poured through the instructions now for several hours, I finally have a handle on it, but, I'm an attorney who practiced for almost 30 years, and granted not in criminal law, but I have a little familiarity with courtroom process and litigation, and it's still confusing.
Okay, well, let's get into those weeds if you have a little handle on it, because all of us have the akin to trying to pick up a medicine ball with greasy hands. We do not have a handle on it at all. Okay, we keep hearing about this, the judge telling the jury that the crime, which Alvin Bragg, when he announced the indictment, he says, a reporter asked him, what is the underlying crime that takes it from a out of the statute of limitations misdemeanor to a within the statute, there are no statute of limitations felony. Well, he did this, he misaccounted for this payment on the ledger knowingly violating an unknown law. I mean, basically, right? I don't have to tell you. Okay, but then the judge says something about 444. Is that what he was referencing? The law that, one of several laws that Trump could have broken? And what are those laws? And what did he mean by 444?
So your confusion is shared by many, and it's understandable. When Alvin Bragg first indicted Donald Trump, he said it was for falsifying business records. So we all knew that was the main charge. But he didn't specify what, in order to make it a felony, you have to say that was done in order to commit another crime or conceal another crime. To elevate it to a felony, it has to be, to include the intent to commit another crime or to conceal that crime. But we weren't sure what that other crime was. Well, we learned maybe at the beginning of the trial what that other crime was, and that was violation of this New York election law, which is in itself squirrely, I will say that. But under New York, it is illegal for any two or more persons to conspire to promote or prevent the election of any person to a public office by unlawful means.
That's vague.
Okay, it's vague. And when you think about it, I mean, what are political campaigns about? You're promoting yourself. You're trying to prevent. So what is the unlawful means? That's where the big question came in. Well, the unlawful means, we learned yesterday, could be federal elections violations, state tax law violations, or falsifying other business records, the ones that aren't included in the charge. And that's where the judge said, hey, the jury doesn't have to agree on what those unlawful means were. They do have to agree that he falsified business records unanimously. They do have to agree that he did so with the intent to either violate this New York election law or to conceal violation of it. But they don't have to agree unanimously on what those unlawful means were.
Wow. So that's where the 444 comes in. Okay. So basically 4 of them could agree on one of the 3 laws he violated, 4 on the other and 4 on the other. He would aggregate that like a drudge of the judge. He would be a drudge judge, aggregating?
He'd be a drudge judge.
He'd be a drudge judge?
They don't have to specify. And I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to go back and look at the instructions again. I don't think the judge himself said you can go 4, 4, and 4. I think that was what analysts were saying when they were saying, they were explaining it.
Okay.
But the jurors don't have to specify, here's what I think the unlawful means were. They just have to think there were unlawful means.
All right. So we're listening to Susie Moore, who is really doing a great job for us knuckle-dragging, Walmart shopping, gun and Bible toting and clinging Midwestern and Mid-Missourians. What the heck's going on up in crazy New York? And that's Susie Moore from Red State here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Susie, we were listening, or I guess looking at the transcriptions of what the judge told the jurors in his instructions. And I think even for those of us trying to cover this, it was like he was talking to them about 3 dozen felonies and 12 invoices and 12 more ledger entries and checks that a Trump signed. And I think for the person out there, is it like, do they have to convict him of each one of these or what?
That is a very good question. Yes, there are 34 counts here, and each count has to do with one document, whether it was an invoice from Michael Cohen or a marking in the ledger, the general ledger for either the trust or for Donald J. Trump himself, or the check and check stub. So they broke it down into each of those documents individually. So for each count, they have to find the same. If they want to find him guilty, they have to find for each of those documents that he did X, Y, and Z. So it's unwieldy.
Do you think that they'll just, do you think they'll just lump those together? Because aren't they basically just that's the same thing over and over again because there were 20 checks here
right.
and, 10.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So if they believe that he's guilty of it, they'll look at the first count, which is, I think, the initial invoice. If they believe that he's guilty of it, they'll say yes on those, and then they'll go through for each of them and go yes, 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 yes.
Okay.
They're not going to say he did it on this one, but not on this one.
Okay. Susie, a couple other things. In your opinion, based on everything you've looked at, and you've analyzed this very carefully, ongoing for now entering the 6th week, what would it tell you? What should it tell us? And what would it tell you if you were the defense attorneys for Donald Trump? The longer the jury is in deliberation.
If I'm the defense attorney, I want the jury out as long as possible.
Why?
That signifies dissension in the jury. Okay. I think it would be very unrealistic to expect an acquittal here, just given all of the factors involved.
So the best they can do is a hung jury?
That's my belief, yes. And so that the longer they're out, the more it implies that they've got at least one, if not more, holdouts saying, I'm not going to go with
Zero chance of an acquittal, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm wrong, I'll be happily wrong.
Well, you're in good company. Jonathan Turley has, I think he wrote something in the New York Post the other day that said, hey, these are the reasons he should be acquitted. I mean, he was holding out hope, but after what happened, yesterday with the orders, it's like, oh, and even after the closing arguments, he's no, best we can hope for is hung jury. Do you think he wouldn't be retried then, would he? Would they waste their time doing that?
Oh, yeah, I think that they possibly could. The question is going to be whether they can feasibly get a retrial before November. And they're going to run into some issues there for a number of reasons from a scheduling standpoint. If they can't get it done before November, they may let it go.
I have another question.
Susie, if convicted, do you think Trump will do jail time?
That is also a good question. And here is my theory on that is that he will not. Not only will he obviously appeal it because duh, but I think that Juan Merchan, as much as he seems to be leaning in favor of the prosecution and happily to see a conviction here, just, based on my observation, I think he will then do the sentencing and basically say, but you're on probation. And here's why. First of all, this is Donald Trump's this would be his first criminal conviction. Secondly, you're talking about a business, a records violation. Very few people would serve jail time for that, for their first offense. They'll still be able to call him a convicted felon, even if he's not serving jail.
Yeah, so the political damage is done, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Another, just a sidebar question. If you were Susie Moore and barred in New York, would you, I don't know if we'll know how the individual jurors voted, but it's going to, let's say they get a unanimous a conviction, and there's two lawyers on that jury. Would you turn one or both of those lawyers into the state bar?
Ooh. I don't think that I would, and here's why. Having not served on the jury myself, I mean, it's easy for me to sit on the outside and observe and say what I, think about it and where I think things might have gone wrong. But I don't know that I would feel like I had, confidently had grounds to turn them into the bar for some sort of violation when I wasn't sitting there and part of the process.
Okay. Is there grounds for someone to try to get this judge in trouble for allowing Stormy Daniels to go on about salacious, irrelevant facts, about not allowing the former chair of the Federal Election Commission to state that as part of his testimony? Therefore, the defense didn't put him on the stand?
So all of those things would certainly be brought up in the motion to set aside the verdict and then the appeal. They'll definitely be part of the appellate process. As far as a separate bar complaint, I mean, I think Elise Stefanik has actually already lodged some against him, and I could see that there being others based on his conduct. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been this is really an enlightening and illuminating discussion. Thank you for having it with us. And we're going to probably tap into your expertise more than once over the next little while. Okay. Because this is good stuff.
I welcome it.
All right.
Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Susie. And really appreciate you being with us. Thanks for keeping your hawk eye on this. Very good work.
You're welcome.
All right. There she is, Susie Moore. Deputy Managing Editor at Red State. All right, when we come back, we'll check in on the market, see what's going on. be back tomorrow. So let's launch into the morning market report, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing. I am not liking what I'm seeing.
No.
Why? The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell to 38,400 yesterday. Do you remember just last week it was above 40,000? It's fallen.
This seems so long ago.
More days than not. The S&P 500 dipped yesterday, closing at 52 and change, 5,200 and change.
So
Why?
is it safe to call that a fluke?
I don't.
When it got up there real high?
I don't think so. I think what's happening is you're seeing
volatile is what we call that.
And what's more worrisome is you dig more into the numbers. 3 or 4 technology stocks, NVIDIA, which is the AI chip monster, they're leading the whole pack. Those 4 stocks really outran all the rest of the S&P put together. And so all 11 sectors that comprise the broader S&P market retreated. This, I think, tells us a lot about market weakness. Now, why is the market...
about AI right now with those tech stocks, isn't it?
It's like there's one thoroughbred that is just leaving all of the other racers in its fumes, maybe running the other way back to the gates. And it turns out that more than 440 stocks out of the S&P 500 were lower on the day. And why is this? Because interest rates are ruling the day. The Treasury note increased to 4.6%. So interest rates are on the rise. Now, what does it mean for you? What it means for you is that mortgage rates began rising again last week. Demand is down for housing. The 30-year fixed mortgages with conforming loan balances increased to 7.05 from 7.01%. So look, the interest news is not good. When interest rates are perceived to or are really rising, markets go down, right? And that on top of the thing that, as the Wall Street Journal reports in a headline, this record stock market is riding on questionable AI assumptions. So does that mean NVIDIA and the other tech stocks are the next to begin to slump because people No, you have
Especially
to.
if you work for state government.
Yeah, because you don't know it, but when you turn on when you log onto the app or anything, you have to that little click box that says like cookies and all that. You're actually signing something. You hold us harmless in case you're caught by your boss. You're not. I'm kidding. But hey, so if you can't though, you can. The show's archived on Facebook, and there's a podcast as well. So many ways to get us. And when you go to the app or to 939theeagle.com or to KWS.com or to the Facebook Wake Up Mid-Missouri page, you can sign up, and you need to sign up if you're going to come to the Debate Watch 2024. The first debate, June 27th, Thursday evening, out at the Lakeside Complex, which is a fabulous venue. It'll be beautiful.
Lakeside Ashland, yeah.
Lakeside Ashland. Is there another Lakeside? I don't know. Lakeside Ashland. It's a fabulous place out there. And they're putting up zip lines. I wonder when those are going to go in. I saw some of the infrastructure out there. That's going to be fun. And so the doors will open at 7, right?
Yep, doors open at 7 on the 27th. We're going to have some local candidates that are running. We're going to have some games to participate in that hour before the debate actually starts at 8 o'clock. The concession stand will be open. And so there will be all sorts of popcorn and drinks and goodies. Randy is very excited.
I'm really excited. And it'll be fun to be hanging out with like-minded and some not like-minded people, right? We hope that folks of all political stripes will be there. And we've actually had a Democrat candidate who's going to be there. If you want to talk to a candidate for Attorney General, Elad Gross.
Yeah.
He's going to be there, and I'm sure others will be there.
And I know John Martin is going to be there.
Great.
Bryce Beal is going to be there. They're rolling in quickly. So looking forward to hanging out with the Wake Up fam. Of course, we are going to be doing a Best Political T-shirt contest.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Stephanie's donated an authentic Made in America, Made in USA MAGA hat. She also has a bust of President Trump.
Yeah, we're going to have some goodies for you guys and maybe some surprise merch.
Yeah, we'll have to do a before and after, like a straw poll beforehand and then after, and see how that's going to go. We'll have some contests as well. So it'll be a lot of fun. Brian, you going to be there?
I'll be there. That's my plan. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Elad Gross, a Democrat, for because most of the listeners to 93.9 The Eagle, based on the ones that contact us, are Republican, and also most of the listeners that listen to News Radio 950 KWS, I would say the great majority of them are Republicans. But I will say this about Elad Gross: I've interviewed him. He's very bright. He's a rising star in the Missouri Democratic Party. And he is coming out into the more rural Republican areas to campaign. And, you never know. Could be in a wave election. I still think he'd be an underdog. But the bottom line is he's an impressive guy. And I've seen him actually litigate in court. I think it was on Clean Missouri.
Sunshine Law. He was a big guy on the Sunshine Law.
Yes, he was. But, I mean, I give all the candidates credit. But certainly for a Democrat, because most of the listeners there are going to be Republican, I would think.
And I've heard from folks who even disagree with him politically that he's just a genuinely nice guy. So I'm excited to meet him and his team.
And he's pretty effective in his days over in the Attorney General's office.
Yeah. And there's been some CNN ex-anchors and news reporters who have said that they were curiously surprised and miffed when they spent time with people that actually were nice to talk to, and they until they found out they were Trump supporters. And so my suggestion is, if you have friends who are maybe left-leaning, maybe even really left, have them come out and learn what a nice bunch of people, conservatives can be. And, I think it'd be a great opportunity. And also for you and them to press the flesh and talk to some of the candidates like Elad Gross and others. Now,
many others will be, and you're right, and that's a big deal. A lot of candidates. I expect there'll be a big crowd. That's a beautiful facility.
Share some buttered popcorn with the progressives. Good compromise is made over food, the golf course, and popcorn. I mean, that's what friends are made.
Make sure they wash their hands first.
Yeah. I'll give you an example on this very same one of our radio stations, Randy. A couple Sundays ago, Mike Murphy was doing his Como-Buzz show on the Eagle. And Anthony Wilroth, who's probably one of the most outspoken progressives in the community, called in and had a position. And then one of our regular callers who calls this show, I can't think of his name, but I can hear his voice in my head, very, very conservative, a Trump supporter, current supporter of former President Trump. He called it, and they had the same opinion. So sometimes they don't always agree, but sometimes there are positions where conservatives and progressives agree, and we see that from time to time.
When people are able to be at computer's length and tapping on their keyboard, they can say things that they would never, ever say when they're looking you in the eye.
That's true.
I think that's why this will be fun. Now, earlier, Cheri Toalson Reisch made some news because she said that the allegedly second reading and to be passed today, according to her, and Kip Kendrick had said that in a news report, the Boone County commissioners will pass their policy on the senior property tax freeze. Cheri said that they're being deceitful, that they're not comporting with the letter and the spirit of the law to go into effect in August, that they're not importing all of the new provisions that were passed this session. Kip Kendrick will be with us at 7:10 tomorrow.
That'd be great.
We've asked him to take a listen to Cheri's interview so that then he can respond. Apparently, some people in his office heard it or whatever. So he's going to be with us at 7:10. Cheri, we had many people who wanted to know where they could sign Cheri's initiative petition. And Anchorfest this weekend, Cheri texted me back. Anchorfest is an opportunity. They can call her at 573-881-3885. 573-881-3885 if you want to sign the petition or see her at Anchorfest this weekend.
And I expect, and she, of course, she has a Capitol office as well if people are interested, but that's probably the best way, the number that you gave to get a hold of her.
I used the word deceitful. I think her word was deceptive.
Deceptive.
I used the wrong word. It was deceptive. I want to be fair about that.
And she was alleging they've been deceptive. She actually said, they have lied. But here's the thing. And former Representative Kendrick reached out to me, and he's happy to come on to address it. And I'm glad he's going to be able to come on. And I'll have that full interview after 9 o'clock up on both. I'll put it up on KWS as well. I want to make a very important point here. Mike Murphy of our staff has covered this more than I have, but I have reported on it as well. And I've covered her for years, respect her. She's been my representative. Her constituent service is out of this world, but I disagree a little bit. She pushed back on me a little bit when I was trying to explain how complex this is. It is complex. She is correct that they are scheduled, and Kip Kendrick said it in Mike's article, they are scheduled to vote. But theoretically, I'm just saying this, theoretically, what if somebody gets sick at the commission, or I don't believe they are, but what if 150 people show up at a meeting? I always try to say scheduled, so they are probably going to vote for it. We believe they will, but they're I don't. I think we're mincing some words there, but I do understand she's very passionate. But I'm still, after interviewing her, and you ask her several follow-up questions, she absolutely believes the commissioners have been deceptive. She
says they're leaving options open for other than property tax freezes for seniors that were meant to be, that should be closed that should be taken advantage of and are not included in their proposition in what they're going to pass, but were in the legislation that was just passed in the Missouri General Assembly.
And I think for a lot of people, Brian, you may attest to that, for the average person out there, they're really confused on about, once this is implemented, what exactly it does do for seniors.
Exactly. And without seeing the final version, and Mike will be at the meeting, it is just, John, it's a hard story to explain. It is. It is very hard because you have to back sell it as a reporter and explain the legislative thing. And would have made it a lot easier. I'm not taking a position on policy, but if the legislature had just said the counties have to do it. The problem is that it makes it difficult to explain because they can opt out, and then and you have to explain that. And then she's saying they're being deceptive. They're saying they're not. It's a complicated issue.
If Kip Kendrick said in news reporting that they were waiting to implement their provision pursuant to the vote of the people in April, to take advantage of the legislation coming out of the assembly, that tells me as a voter, I would expect them to incorporate not some, not more, not less, but exactly what was in the legislative statute. And if they've come short of that, then I think it's been misrepresented. Okay? If you say you're waiting for what's in the legislative assembly and you imply that you're going to incorporate it, you can play Philadelphia law. Well, I never said that. Okay, but if the implication is we're waiting for the statute and you decide not to incorporate 100% of the statute, then you have disappointed us. That would be my stance.
The whole thing was a compromise after it passed. It really was.
And
what they originally talked about, Brian, like we brought up to Cheri, said back in the original discussions of this and some of the hearings, they wanted to mirror what some states like New York have done,
right.
and cut seniors' taxes. I think one version of the bill was to cut their property taxes, depending on their income, by as much as 50%.
But I think what she told me when I asked her,
right.
Are you just saying that they've included some, but not all of what was intended and what was stated in the statute just passed by the legislature?
And that's exactly what she said. Kip Kendrick in Mike Murphy's article, and some of this is even a little out of date right now, but most of his article applies. He's going to update it. But Kip Kendrick said at the time Boone County would likely be the first county in Missouri to implement the new law.
We were complimentary of them because we assumed they were going to, quote, implement the new law. If you're implementing some but not all the law, shame on you. You should implement the whole law if that's what you intend to do.
And I think
I'm going to challenge Mr. Kendrick on that.
And I understand it.
I have not met him, but I'm just going to challenge him. You led us to believe, and I complimented the commission on air. And I said, wow, fantastic. Look at this. Boone County's going to adopt and if they're not adopting every bit of what the law said, I think that's disingenuous.
Yeah, he may have been at a meeting. Normally, I can tell you a lot of times, Representative Kendrick, I still call him Representative, Commissioner Kendrick listens to the show. So, I mean, he does listen, and he's always been,
No, and I've seen him speak at the Columbia Chamber of Commerce breakfast. I was impressed. They were talking about housing.
And he's also a rising star in the Missouri Democratic Party. I do, without question, he's a rising star in the Democratic Party. He can't help
he's a Democrat, but he's a nice guy.
But Representative Reisch she's really passionate about this issue. There is no question. And I definitely sensed, for the first time in a long time, frustration with how the news media, myself, KMIZ, reported it this morning that it was scheduled to be discussed. And I sensed that frustration. My point of the matter is that if you look at the agenda, Randy, that is how but it does appear it's going to vote, but theoretically they could table the thing.
But in Mike's report, it said, I think it was Mike's report, it didn't Commissioner Kendrick indicate he anticipated first reading Tuesday, second reading, and passage on Thursday.
But do you know how many times I've reported on Columbia City Council that they're going to vote on something that gets tabled? I mean, the point, I'm not saying anything bad about what Kip Kendrick said, and Mike's report was accurate. I'm just saying things can get tabled just because it's scheduled to be voted on. It could be delayed. I'm just saying. I don't think it will.
Can Randy and John and Hannah and Stephanie Bell will be back this tomorrow morning. We hope she's having a good assignment day today. She's out. Tomorrow I'm going to have I'm going to ask you a question, and Stephanie, Hannah, about a story out of Australia and what they've done down there. It'll be fun. We'll talk about that tomorrow. So just to whet your appetite. Whet. WHET. Okay.
All right, Stewie Griffin.
Now, this is a leftover time, and I'm gonna take leftover number 1 here.
Numero uno.
I caught this tape of New York University. Remember, that's where they were doing the encampment, and they were having all the mess up there about the Palestinian and pro-Gaza and anti-Israel last month. And here are some of the reasons that students are, some of the study paths that they're taking, and why I think I'm reconsidering my stance on student loans. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not satire.
My name is Jacob, and my concentration is environmental science and sustainable business.
Hi, my name is Lex, and my concentration is the performance of self.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle. My concentration is creative direction, production, and narrative through the arts, performance, and written word.
Hi, my name is Karina Gomez, and my concentration is in journalism and Latin American studies, with an emphasis in human rights, collective memory, and political violence.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Lee, and I studied the sociology of environmental communication.
Hi, my name is Reed, and I study music business and gender studies.
Hi, my name is Dominique, and I studied care politics with a minor in disability studies.
Now, Hannah, do you understand why some of us have a problem with forgiving student loans when this is what some of them have gone to?
Oh, I mean, I understand why some of us, as you put it, have issues repaying student loan debt, even for like legit.
No, you had a
degrees.
legit degree, right? So there's a different discussion there.
So yeah, it's not that I don't understand, but yeah, those are a little out there. What's interesting, is that from the U.S., do you know?
New York University.
It's just interesting that they all said their concentration area. Like that to me,
what happened to major?
Most people say my major.
That's because up in the Northeast, they have to be different. They have to be.
We were talking about that earlier.
They have to be eclectic. They have to be ethereal. They have to
sound smarter than everyone else.
Oh. All right. So here's your homework assignment, everyone. Oh, the jury has just made a third note